I thought Romney won, and Romney won big. He won by 2 touchdowns. You know, when a challenger just steps up on the stage, that already gives him stature. But when he performs the way Romney did, I think it really changes things. It doesn't change the game, but it changes the momentum. The Romney campaign has had a terrible month, to the extent that people are saying, you know, who is this guy? He seems like a sap. All of a sudden, this Romney shows up, and he is knowledgeable, he's confident, and he's got nerve. He never backed down on any of the Obama attacks. In fact, every time Obama hurled a particular at him, he came back with a 3-point answer, not a 1-point answer, but a 3. So I think he didn't just hold his own. He showed himself to be the equal of the president. And in fact, if you counted it on points the way you would have fight, you'd say he won by far the majority of the rounds. And I think for him, what that does is it gives him stature that he doesn't have. And it changes the narrative of a campaign that is sort of clueless, going nowhere and making a mistake after mistake, to one in which people stop and say, is that the guy? And this is the first time they're actually seeing him unfiltered. That's not the guy that we thought we saw and we heard about and we read about. He's different from that. And with Obama, I thought he had a very weak night. It looked as if he was sitting on a lead. I can guarantee you that if he'd been behind in the polls, he would have hammered at the 47%. The video that really damaged Romney, it didn't come up at all. And that's somebody who thinks all he has to do is get up there, play out the 90 minutes, hold the ball, and win. But he didn't. He lost. Again, it's not going to change the election, but I think it does stop the Romney slide. It's not just that it energizes his base. I think what's important here is that people who've heard millions of dollars worth of ads about Romney, that he's the Gordon Gekko of our time, that he wants to inflict a pain on the middle class, look at this guy and say, he's got no horns. He's a guy who has ideas. Some of them perhaps are wrong, but he's got some concern for the country. He's got ideas, and he knows his stuff. So I think it helps to wipe away a lot of that advantage that Obama's had from this huge amount of advertising that you've seen in the swing states. And I think we might begin to see some slight narrowing, perhaps a point or two, but that's all you need to change the direction of an election with a month to go.
Charles, quickly, the first answer by President Obama, actually his opening statement, he mentioned the auto bailout. We didn't hear anything about the 47% tape or any of that once through the 90 minutes. We thought going into this debate, perhaps President Obama would attack on that tape. He didn't.
He didn't attack on that. I think his thinking was, you know, the worst thing he can do is to appear aggressive and beating up on the challenger and sort of lose the image of the cool and composed guy. So in order not to do that, he was excessively deferential but in some sense weak. And that's what you do when you think that you're ahead. I suspect in the second round, he's going to be a lot different.
Charles, thank you as always.
Pleasure.
And so I put forward a specific $4 trillion deficit reduction plan. It's on a website. You can look at all the numbers, what cuts we make and what revenue we raise. And the way we do it is $2.50 for every cut. We ask for $1 of additional revenue, paid for, as I indicated earlier, by asking those of us who have done very well in this country to contribute a little bit more to reduce the deficit. Governor Romney earlier mentioned the Bowles-Simpson Commission. Well, that's how the commission, bipartisan commission that talked about how we should move forward, suggested we have to do it in a balanced way with some revenue and some spending cuts.
I have my own plan. It's not the same as Simpson-Bowles, but in my view, the president should have grabbed it. If he wanted to make some adjustments to it, take it, go to Congress, fight for it.
That's what we've done. Made some adjustments to it, and we're putting it forward before Congress right now. A $4 trillion plan.
But you've been president 4 years. You've been president 4 years. Right. You said you cut the deficit in half. It's now 4 years later. We still have trillion-dollar deficits. The CBO says we'll have a trillion-dollar deficit each of the next 4 years. If you're reelected, we'll get to a trillion-dollar debt. I mean, you have said before you'd cut the deficit in half. And I love this idea of $4 trillion in cuts. You found $4 trillion of ways to reduce or to get closer to a balanced budget, except we still show trillion-dollar deficits every year. That doesn't get the job done. I was in New Hampshire. A woman came to me and she said, look, I can't afford insurance for myself or my son. I met a couple in Appleton, Wisconsin, and they said, we're thinking of dropping our insurance. We can't afford it. And the number of small businesses I've gone to that are saying they're dropping insurance because they can't afford it, the cost of health care is just prohibitive, and we've got to deal with cost. And unfortunately, when you look at Obamacare, the Congressional Budget Office has said it will cost $2,500 a year more than traditional insurance. So it's adding to cost. And as a matter of fact, when the president ran for office, he said that by this year, he would have brought down the cost of insurance for each family by $2,500 a family. Instead, it's gone up by that amount. So it's expensive. Expensive things hurt families. So that's one reason I don't want it. Second reason, it cuts $716 billion from Medicare to pay for it. I want to put that money back in Medicare for our seniors. Number three, it puts in place an unelected board that's going to tell people ultimately what kind of treatments they can have. I don't like that idea. Fourth, there was a survey done of small businesses across the country. It said, what's been the effect of Obamacare on your hiring plans? And 3/4 of them said it makes us less likely to hire people. I just don't know how the president could have come into office facing 23 million people out of work, rising unemployment, an economic crisis at the kitchen table, and spent his energy and passion for 2 years fighting for Obamacare instead of fighting for jobs for the American people. It has killed jobs. And the best course for health care is to do what we did in my state, craft a plan at the state level that fits the needs of the state. And then let's focus on getting the cost down for people rather than raising it with the $2,500 additional premium.
The oil industry gets $4 billion a year in corporate welfare. Basically, they get deductions that those small businesses that Governor Romney refers to, they don't get. Now, does anybody think that ExxonMobil needs some extra money when they're making money every time you go to the pump? Why wouldn't we want to eliminate that? Why wouldn't we eliminate tax breaks for corporate jets? My attitude is if you got a corporate jet, you can probably afford to pay full freight, not get a special break for it.
The Department of Energy has said the tax break for oil companies is $2.8 billion a year. And it's actually an accounting treatment, as you know, that's been in place for 100 years. Now,
it's time to end it.
And in 1 year, you provided $90 billion in breaks to the green energy world. Now, I like green energy as well, but that's about 50 years worth of what oil and gas receives. And you say Exxon and Mobil. Actually, this $2.8 billion goes largely to small companies, to drilling operators and so forth. But you know, if we get that tax rate from 35% down to 25%, why, that $2.8 billion is on the table. Of course it's on the table. That's probably not going to survive if you get that rate down to 25%. But don't forget, you put $90 billion, like 50 years worth of breaks into solar and wind, to Solyndra and Fisker and Tesla and Enter1. I mean, I had a friend who said you don't just pick the winners and losers, you pick the losers. All right. So this is not the kind of policy you want to have. You want to get America energy secure. I want to bring down the tax burden on middle-income families. And I'm going to work together with Congress to say, okay, what are the various ways we could bring down deductions, for instance? One way, for instance, would be to have a single number. Make up a number, $25,000, $50,000. Anybody can have deductions up to that amount. And then that number disappears for high-income people. That's one way one could do it. One could follow Bowles-Simpson as a model and take deduction by deduction and make differences that way. There are alternatives to accomplish the objective I have, which is to bring down rates, broaden the base, simplify the code, and create incentives for growth. Look behind us, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. The role of government is to promote and protect the principles of those documents. First, life and liberty. We have a responsibility to protect the lives and liberties of our people, and that means a military second to none. I do not believe in cutting our military. I believe in maintaining the strength of America's military. Second, in that line that says we are endowed by our Creator with our rights, I believe we must maintain our commitment to religious tolerance and freedom in this country. That statement also says that we are endowed by our Creator with the right to pursue happiness as we choose. I interpret that as, one, making sure that those people who are less fortunate and can't care for themselves are cared by one another. We're a nation that believes that we're all children of the same God, and we care for those that have difficulties, those that are elderly and have problems and challenges, those that are disabled. We care for them, and we look for discovery and innovation, all these things desired out of the American heart to provide the pursuit of happiness for our citizens. But we also believe in maintaining for individuals the right to pursue their dreams and not to have the government substitute itself for the rights of free individuals. And what we're seeing right now is, in my view, a trickle-down government approach, which has government thinking it can do a better job than free people pursuing their dreams, and it's not working. And the proof of that is 23 million people out of work. The proof of that is 1 out of 6 people in poverty. The proof of that is we've gone from 32 million on food stamps to 47 million on food stamps. The proof of that is that 50% of college graduates this year can't find work. We know that the path we're taking is not working. It's time for a new path.
There was one line that scored above everything else of the two presidential candidates. Let's take a look at what our undecided voters said was the highlight of this debate.
As president, I will sit down on day one, actually the day after I get elected. I'll sit down with leaders, the Democratic leaders, as well as Republican leaders. The reason I'm in this race is there are people that are really hurting today in this country. And we face this deficit could crush the future generations. What's happening in the Middle East? There are developments around the world that are of real concern. And Republicans and Democrats both love America. But we need to have leadership in Washington that will actually bring people together and get the job done, and could not care less if it's a Republican or a Democrat. I've done it before. I'll do it again.